Astrology is the myths of the stars and planets, telling the themes and plots of our lives. These stories come to us daily through our satellite, the Moon. She is constantly spinning astro news. Hi, I'm Merrylin Leblanc with Moonwise. On this Valentine weekend, what are you thinking about those you love? Today, Daniel Fiverson and I will be talking about two planets that tell us about the climate of thoughts, conversations, and appreciations of others. Those planets are Mercury and Venus. At this time, both of those planets are in Capricorn, but soon to be in Aquarius. Mercury will move there at 3:43 this afternoon, Mountain Time, and Venus will move there at 9:17 p.m. on Tuesday, February 16th. Mercury and Venus provide information about relationships, and in Capricorn, where they are right now, they focus on the values, trials, and accomplishments of partnerships or relationships as a resource. While in Aquarius, the focus shifts to making improvements with or in relationships to seek progress or evolution through them. Which brings me, of course, to evolutionary astrologer Daniel Fiverson. Welcome back to Moonwise, Daniel.
Thank you, Merrylin. It's great to be here.
So what do you have to say about these relationship-oriented planets being in Aquarius? What do you have to say about Aquarius?
Well, it's interesting because Saturn and Uranus, Capricorn and Aquarius have a lot of relationship between themselves, and the shift from one to the other, is really significant because we're moving from, a social sphere to a much more personal sphere. Aquarius is community for sure, and it's our friends, and it's the visions that we have. But it's also about ourselves. It's about our individuality. So we're moving into a month-long phase where we're going to really be thinking about what's my role in this relationship? How am I still an individual? As I love my friends and my partners and the people in my lives, the people that I have relationships with.
That's kind of great. Daniel, you noticed a difference in sound.
Yes, I do.
We didn't hear a lot of what you were saying.
Sorry, yeah.
We could get it kind of as an echo. But so, you were talking about relationships and the sign of Aquarius, which, is typically thought of too as a friendship kind of sign, and very concerned about the conditions of humanitarian, of humankind at large. This sign, when I think about the symbolism, it's very caught up in the things that humanity has been able to do for each other and for others, and how that moves along in terms of what we think of as advancements in our social conditions, whether it's institutions we set up or even buildings or inventions, the technology, etc. But all of that is really meant to enhance relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. Venus is what's important to us. Relationships certainly are where we seek, the basic resources, the basic things that we need to know who we are and to understand who we are in the mirror of others, in the mirror of the relationship itself. But the whole, the archetype of Aquarius is, what's good for everybody. It's not just what's good for me. And so with Venus in Aquarius, we're going to be looking more what's good for this relationship, rather than what am I just getting out of it, or what is my partner getting out of it, and to try and get past that those imbalances and those distortions that show up where two individuals become more self-centered rather than really focused on the relationship itself. The relationship is about both of us, and Aquarius is about what's really good for the world at large. What's the higher good for everybody?
And yet, you'll also read in books about astrology that Aquarians tend to be quirky and independent and aloof. And for me as an Aquarian, although we're really talking about the sign no matter what kind of planets you have in and wherever, but I have the sun and a couple planets and an asteroid in that sign. So I've lived it many years and I'm quite familiar with it. And this whole idea of independence with Aquarius, I'm talking personally at this moment, but it applies to many Aquarians, is that we recognize that the opportunity to do our own thing, to be independent, to have the freedom to do and go and be with or whatever we want, really depends on everybody having those same opportunities.
Right.
And that's where relationship becomes extremely important, because we recognize that that need on a social level to set the context within which any individual can have the freedom, the liberty to be and to express however they want to. So the matrix of humanity is really important to an Aquarian.
Yeah. We have to look at the polarity. Always, we recognize that everything is polarities, and the polarity of Aquarius is Leo. I think everybody knows that is listening. Leo is where we express our own sense of self, our own individuality, our own ego projected out into the world, ego not being a bad word. But in Aquarius, we have to find a whole new level of that individuality, a whole new level of our personal creativity that works with the community, not just as good for us. We have to be able, in a sense, give it away. We have to let go of owning our own creativity and find a level of creativity that we can share.
And actually, talking about Leo, for Leo to have the audience that is desired, there has to be that concern that the audience's needs are being taken care of as well. So we're with the polarity of Leo and Aquarius, we're finding that balance. And it's nice that you bring up Leo on a Valentine weekend, because Leo is that creative sign that just, how can I uniquely express myself, which is partly Aquarian.
Well, Leo rules the heart.
Leo rules the heart, and Aquarius rules the heart of humanity.
Right. And
the two together, it's like, and especially with the sun is always in Aquarius for Valentine's Day, which is sort of the expression of love for for mankind and all. With one of the rulers, Uranus, in the sign of Aries right now. It's talking about individual expression.
Right.
And so if you haven't planned anything special to express or give to someone or all of those whom you love dearly, let it rip. I mean, just go for what you really feel like saying to them or giving them. That's the energy of the weekend. It's like open to the peculiar, open to a little quirkiness, maybe.
Let your instincts run free.
Exactly. Like I just had this image of, taking your tablet or iPad or whatever over to a friend's house and inviting them to go on a journey with you somewhere, or even to your lover if you're living in the same place or whatever, and going out and finding ways to express in fun, acceptable ways. I mean, Aquarius can be quirky, but it's not necessarily rude or anything of that sort. Quirky ways of doing something together that you could actually use modern technology to be a reminder of these special moments that you have in relationship.
Well, I think with Mercury moving into Aquarius today and being, at the very beginning of the sign for the holiday itself, and Saturn being the traditional ruler of Aquarius, maybe the old technology is sit down and talk. Sit down and actually talk to each other. Get off your phone. Stop texting. Get away from the flat screen, and actually have a conversation.
How about doing both?
Yeah.
Hey, you're listening to Moonwise. I'm Merrylin Leblanc here at KSFR 101.1 or streaming on the web at KSFR, where you can always listen to the podcasts of this show. And Daniel, guess what? Finally, I got the the audio from the event we did last month, the year ahead.
Yes.
I got that on our website and the podcast for Moonwise. So those of you that were listening, and I know some of you have asked me about the audio, it's available on Moonwise. Moonwise's podcast page. If you go to our homepage, KSFR.org, and hit the program tab under it, you'll see podcasts. Hit that and look alphabetically for Moonwise. You can find the road ahead. You can search for it, find it right away or whatever, and hear what 4 astrologers here in Santa Fe had to say and still have much more to say about the year 2016. Daniel, you talked about Uranus and Eris.
Yes.
And then we had more about Uranus and Pluto, and we had information about the polarity of the signs Virgo and Pisces, especially with a lot of planetary energy going on there.
Good mythology from Jason.
Yes, Jason Hawley.
Jason Hawley.
And Stephen McFadden talked about the earth signs and did some grounding in the earth literally through that. So keep that in mind. It's time for the Moon Minute. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly. KSFR programming and podcasts are made possible by the financial support of our listeners. If this program is important to you, please consider making a contribution by clicking on the red Support This Station button at the top of our homepage at ksfr.org. Welcome back to Moonwise. I'm Merrylin LeBlanc here on KSFR 101.1 or ksfr.org if you're streaming. Today, Daniel Fiverson, my guest, and I are talking about Mercury and Venus, 2 planets that talk a lot about relationships, what we think about them, and how we feel about them with these planets. And they are soon to both be in the sign of Aquarius. Mercury in about an hour and a half from now, and Venus on the 16th in the evening, Tuesday evening. And talking about Aquarius, where these planets will spend close to a month, roughly. We've and Aquarius is an air sign and all the air signs in some way talk about relationships. And one of the things that Daniel and I have both been noticing is that there have been a lot of relationship issues that have been coming up for people, ourselves included. We don't exclude ourselves in this process. And Daniel, you have a take on that. You want to share some of your information?
Sure. I like the fact, Merrylin, that you mentioned that Aquarius is air, because we're talking. It's mental. Air is mental. It has a lot to do with intellect and what we think. Uranus is, are the thoughts that come to us of their own volition, if you would. But, from an evolutionary astrology perspective, when a planet is retrograde, we often talk that it has an Aquarian component to it. And what I mean by that is that Aquarius takes a step back. It has objectivity. It gets at arm's length from situations and people, and to why Aquarians are considered to be so aloof, because they need that distance. And it's the same thing that happens when a planet goes retrograde, because we're actually looking back. We're seeing it through a rearview mirror. And in effect, that is the same perspective. So we may, for the next month, we may very well feel that Mercury has gone retrograde again. Even though it just went direct, it's still in its shadow. And as Merrylin pointed out before this show, Venus is opposite where it was retrograde last summer. So we could very well feel those energies again. And, as we all know, relationships are, kind of the wheel of fortune, if you're familiar with tarot, where, we go through cycles. And
I was thinking of the game show, sorry.
Okay, well, that too, where things come around. Issues that have not been resolved will keep coming up for resolution. So, we could very well feel that we're going to be moving through that cycle to agree again as both of these personal planets move through the sign of Aquarius. We have to remember that, Venus is not only relationship to others, it's our relationship to ourselves. And Mercury is not just what we tell others, it's also what we tell ourselves. So we very well could, be focused or come up close and personal with both of these issues in our lives and how they are reflected through our relationships with others.
What you're also reminding me about too is one of the planets we associate with Aquarius is Saturn, and Saturn is representative of the lessons of our soul that we still need to master.
Yeah.
And in this case, with this sign, those lessons come up in relationships.
Well, there's a very special relationship between Saturn and Uranus in particular, because Saturn, we have a trauma, which is Uranus. We have a bad experience, something is painful. It's Saturn that stuffs it, pushes it down into our subconscious. But Uranus is the planet that outs it, that pushes it back up into our consciousness, makes us aware of it. Chiron actually is the intermediary between those two, according to Barbara Hand Clow. But there's a definite relationship between what comes up from our subconscious and what gets pushed down into our subconscious. And again, both of these personal planets over the next month are going to make aspects to both Saturn and Uranus. So we could see old wounds. Chiron's also going to be in the mix. Old wounds, old issues, things that we thought, that we've been perhaps in denial about, that we've suppressed or repressed. And Uranus is going to, through Mercury and through Venus, through our relationships, through the stories we tell ourselves, our self-narrative, is going to, bring some of those things back up into the forefront to be healed, not to make us feel bad, not to make us, feel that pain again, but for them to be healed.
Also to elaborate on this whole idea of this kind of going back over issues with relationships, with Venus involved, I can't help but think of using the psychological process of projection to figure out when you have an issue in a relationship. What is that issue? How is that issue mirrored in oneself?
Well, Aquarius is projection. Aquarius is a yang energy, and it's air. So here we have projecting our thoughts onto other people.
Well, yes, in that respect, every planet, every sign, every planet has an element of projection to it. But I was specifically thinking about the psychological, mental process of projecting it onto others. But yeah, we're really on the same page, but approaching it from different perspectives.
I think so.
Obviously, but so the other side of that, in terms of projection. And issues is if there's a lot of projection going on, how are we projecting the good stuff?
Well, one of the things that's working in our favor is the South Node in Pisces. Here we have another relationship with what's going on. Pisces, actually Neptune, is the higher octave of Venus. It's our ultimate meaning, our ultimate sense of love and connectedness. So that's one of the undercurrents, if you would, that is pulling us forward. It's or pushing us forward. We're feeling that almost an angst between Virgo and Pisces. On one hand, we know what that ideal is, and on the other hand, we're recognizing where it's not so ideal. So we're kind of in that push-pull kind of tension. With Venus moving, through Aquarius, certainly with old memories coming up. Uranus is the storehouse of all our karmic memories, our individuated unconscious. It's a huge complex. The interesting thing that I love about astrology is that the way it all is woven together. We're looking at a tapestry. We're not we're looking at these threads, and we're pulling at the red thread and the blue thread. But it's not the red thread and the blue thread. We have to do the Aquarian thing and stand back and look at the whole pattern of the tapestry itself.
How do red and blue go together? And, bringing up the nodes, the North Node is in Virgo,
Right.
the opposite sign of Pisces. And Virgo is associated with Mercury.
Right.
So there is something to be said at this time and throughout the weeks ahead about our really expressing as specific as we can get, down to the last detail, how we feel about significant people in our lives.
There's a discernment for sure. That's part of the Venus retrograde, attitude, if you would.
And I was going to say, and I know we're not going to bring up politics,
Right.
but expressing how we feel about this country that has, in the natal chart that many of us use for it, has Aquarius, an Aquarius moon, which represents the emotional states here. So,
The Gemini rising chart also has Uranus rising in the U.S. chart. It depends on which chart you subscribe to, what time of birth. But Uranus is clearly very, very prominent in the U.S. chart. Uranus was discovered during the American Revolution.
We're kind of using a Uranus and then Aquarius.
Well, yeah,
but those two are, there's this school of thought in astrology that whether you're talking about the planets, the signs, or the houses, there is an inner relationship that some people find when you're really looking at things objectively out there, that they actually fit no matter how other people ascribe to a certain syntax about them. And the other big component in astrology are the aspects, and there's even ways of connecting those to a sign, but we won't go there today.
Right.
It's just like, okay, over the top.
Right.
That's so Aquarian to want to go farther and farther into things. So last words about Aquarius and Mercury and Venus?
Sure. Love yourself. Tell the truth. Be honest in your relationship. Express what you need. Love yourself, and in turn, you will love everyone else.
Yes, indeed. And as we wind down here, we want to talk about what's going on in town in terms of opportunities to get more information from an astrological perspective. Daniel, you and the astrologers who were in the performance that KSFR sponsored back in January 24th, I believe it was, called The Road Ahead, are forming a group that's going to be meeting on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's really exciting. We're going to get together at Cocina de Balam on 3rd Street. And we're going to have our first, we're calling it an astrological salon, and we're going to meet for the first time on March 24th. And each month we're going to get together, and one of us is going to kind of air, something that's current, that's happening celestially, that's happening astrologically, that's affecting all of us. It's going to kind of be an open forum. All of us will be there. Jason Holly, Marcia Stark, Stephen McFadden, myself, and we'll all participate. It'll be open for audience participation, attendee participation. It's really going to be a fun, illuminating, exciting event. And we're going to start at 6:30 every night. We encourage everybody to come and have a meal with Balam, around 5:30 or so.
That is, I've not been there, but that is a restaurant here in town. That's right off of Cerrillos on 3rd, right?
It's a really wonderful space that's open. Balam has this tremendous sense of community, and spirituality for everybody in town. He's really pulling together all different kinds of thought and building community. We're really excited and grateful to have this venue to be able to do this, and so we also want to support him in his efforts. It's really going to be an exciting event. So mark your calendar, March 24th, 6:30. We'll all be there. Come with your questions. Come, with your friends. Come with your enemies, and come heal that relationship at the same time. Bring your mother, bring your father, your sister, bring your neighbor, bring everybody. It's gonna be a free event.
by that time, I believe, I haven't looked at exactly, but I think we think Venus will be in Pisces, a sign that she absolutely loves, the sign of the Great Mother, and talking about being nurtured both in body and in mind. It's a great symbolism for that time. So, Daniel, I guess, thank you. I mean, you organized behind the scenes a lot for the road ahead, and you're organizing this, and thank you for keeping astrology alive in the community. I try to do that on the airwaves, and there are a lot of people here in Santa Fe and in the surrounding area who are into astrology, and that I think Daniel and I both share as a part of our mission as astrologers, is to help people understand this tool. It's a navigation tool, and it shows us things about our lives that sometimes you wouldn't even give much consideration or thought to, and yet it's important in some ways to do that. So thank you, Daniel.
Yeah, it's been around for 6,000 years, maybe longer.
I'd say longer.
Yeah, probably longer. We don't really know where it was before Babylonia, but it's an amazing tool, and more and more people are discovering it as one of the best self-help, self-improvement, self-empowering tools and modalities that they can find for their own growth and their own peace and happiness and well-being.
Right. And we have about a minute more that we could talk about things. And I know, Daniel, you did a chart for February 26th, coming up later this month, where talking about Venus and Aquarius, where the rulers, Saturn and Uranus, will be in this nice connection, harmonious connection with each other, both in fire signs. And Venus will be like at the midpoint between the two of them. What can you say briefly, about 30 seconds, what can you say about this triangle?
Well, we've got two sextiles and a trine here, where these are very facilitating aspects, energies that are all in unison, working together, very harmonious. This is a perfect time as we move through the end of the month, the last week in February, to really, look at any relationship that has been difficult. This is a really great healing energy to open up a conversation. Mercury. To really reach out to the other. Venus, Saturn and Uranus are both about growth and structure, and just to heal anything that needs to be healed. Take advantage of it.
Great. Well, thanks for being my guest once again, and all of you out there for this Thanksgiving, for this Valentine's weekend. Love one another. Talk to you next week.